Taigh. So the prize goes tonight to Mike Kennedy. He guessed the fiddler. It's Joe McLean from Washabuck. And so Joe ties in with our theme tonight because we're traveling over to central Cape Breton to visit with some storytellers. So, Falcha de Vula, Fesca Magriv, Hami Hotalacha Vian Colin Ivanach. So I'm really happy to be with you all again tonight. Shefranga Kaharam, Agus Sauna Shudik Hami, Hami on a Halifax in Brasta. So my name is Frances McKevin and I'm from Little Judik, but I'm here in Halifax, joining you from Halifax tonight. So, and welcome to the, it's the 5th session of Tadhail, the Gaelic Narrative Project. And tonight we're focusing on storytelling.
Oh, shit. Take it upstairs.
So maybe we'll mute the the other Natasha. It's Marley's iPad, yeah. So yeah, we're focusing on storytelling tonight. And to begin, I want to acknowledge the story keepers of this land. Most of us are calling in from Mhigi, the ancestral and the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq Nation. And our people came here, the Gaels, to Mi'kmaq through the peace and friendship treaty signed between the British Crown and the Mi'kmaq Nation. And today is April 16th, which is actually the 275th anniversary of Culloden. So I thought I'd mention that, and a very pivotal historic event for the Gaels, and particularly the aftermath and the legacy of Culloden, which brought many of us over here to, well, to Nova Scotia and to many parts of the world. So it's wonderful to be able to, 275 years later, be able to still tell Gaelic stories. So the project is called Tadhail, the Gaelic Narrative Project. And the process we're using is reauthoring. And reauthoring, the main principle behind it is really putting the pen back in the hands of people so we can tell our own stories. And mentioning Culloden and mentioning here we are in Mi'kmaq, yes, we share a colonial narrative. And so we are, you know, by reauthoring, we're taking another look at the stories that that really influence our lives. And we do that by listening to the stories of our guests, but also our own stories. And both, you know, checking in with the narratives we live by, maybe they no longer serve us, or maybe in looking at them, we see them in a different way. Sometimes we minimize our stories. And so we can look at them and say, you know, that's really some extraordinary stories and moments from ordinary people. So that's a bit of what we're doing. So we're going to jump right into it. And as we usually do, we connect before we get into introducing the guests. And so we're going to do that in the breakout rooms. And if you've been here before, you're familiar with our breakout rooms. And there's 3 people go in the rooms usually. And we are going to answer questions. And what we'd like you to do is just take a minute to introduce yourselves. But when it comes to your time, you'll have 5 minutes to answer the questions. And the other people in the room just have to listen and witness your story or witness your answers to the questions. And we ask everyone to take their 5 minutes. So we all get a chance to share our stories or share our memories or stories. So we're going to go in the room and there will be a clock there. So you can see there'll be a little clock in the room, I think, so you can watch the time. And yeah, and so please take your time. If you've finished speaking, just be very comfortable with a pause, because some more information might come to you as you sit and think. And you know, so there's no hurry here. We're going to practice slowness, just like the people in the central Cape Breton did the Gaels. They were never in a big hurry. So take your time and listen and enjoy the breakout rooms. And we'll see you back here in about 15 minutes. Hello, Echen. Oh, you're muted. Hashin a feyab san hula dunya at the Gina Rash.
Hi, Hector. Janet McKenzie. Janet McKenzie's here. Your nephew Robin is listening in to the interview tonight.
Hector, you're muted.
There. Hello, Janet. Hi, Robin.
He's waving in the background.
Okay. I'm waving back. You just can't see me.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have everyone back from the breakout rooms now? I would say so.
Yep.
Great. Great. Okay. Well, Echen.
Hey.
Jesu lahakat.
Oh, Suma.
Suma. Taigh noch. Yeah, I was just welcoming Hector. We were co-hosts tonight, but as we started planning, it became apparent that Hector was also a guest, and because he's a wonderful storyteller, and so he's going to sit in both chairs tonight, which is kind of appropriate because in the first session I reminded you of a proverb that talks about the rhythm of a ceili. And it's a hiad skiel ed fedden Taigh, skiel gawa ed anui. So the first tale from the host and tales until dawn from the guest. So we'll get a story from Hector. But before we do, I forgot, I wanna say some things about Hector and introduce him. Hector, I met Hector in the 1990s, I think it was. And at that time, Hector had started was learning Gaelic in the 80s and was one of a few people learning Gaelic at that time. There were many people, older people that spoke the language that were still living in Cape Breton in particular, but few people learning it. And Hector was one of the people that was learning Gaelic, and he started teaching Gaelic. He became Gaelic director at the Gaelic College, and he taught at CBU. And he was also an important founding member of Taigh in Christmas Island, a lovely festival, summer festival that's been going on for a number of decades now, very important to Gaelic culture. And Hector's been a wonderful friend to Gaelic and to the Gaels, and a great storyteller and singer. So it's my pleasure to welcome him. And so Hector, going back to the proverb there, would you share a story with us to start?
I'd love to share a story with you, indeed. I got this story from Mickey Benellic in Iona. He's a great fellow. Mickey will say a little more about him later. But I was in one day and he talking about stories, and he told me this story. Gamish Garoji Stone, but they're right. I guess that shuls at the kosh. It happened that there were these two fellows, and they were on the road. They were walking. They were traveling by foot. I guess that fast ski is krach, maar we doen je shul machines. But dan zeg het er een thuis, so veel je got kind of in Taigh big snow down. Well, they were walking and they were getting tired, as a person would be, and hungry from traveling like that on foot. And they're going by this tiny little house. And one fellow was looking at the house. So we're still, nach statue in a shower, says he. Piach and facing cup of tea, grain bees, good your time walk on. I said to the other fellow, why don't we stop at this house and we'll get a cup of tea and bite to eat and a little rest. And Oh, I said, I reckon let's go and take in it. I reckon let's go and Darishin. And I used to know Gia stay in Darishin. Well, the other fellow said, well, I wouldn't bother going to that house. He said, you won't get in that house. You won't get, God himself won't get through that door. He said, Tadhail, can't I said, well, I says, but enough massa cross the for the Hanushins, and you get it done, you some be stoys and Taigh, because Hanai stay. The other fellow said, well, there's kind of a miserable cross woman living there, and she won't let anyone in the house. She said, you won't get in. You only should stay. I says, I'll get in, he said. Chaig and Doris, Van Heswick and Doris. And again, Howard Gask and Doris, Goskally and Doris. Well, he went to the door and he stood there, and sure enough, the lady came to the door and she opened it. Honiki and strange, and the Heswick and the more. Well, I see, she got my leshkala, see, ach, Hanyami got any hugger, see, gee, Hanset roots. Oh, says, can you rooms at William Jen Suya? William Jen Suya, I see. Tapel at us as in Smishanish, and she been in the horse, highest days rain and Suya. Well, she said, she looked at the stranger out there, she said, I'm sorry, but I don't recognize you. Can you tell me what they call you? They call me, he said, they call me William Sit Down. William Sit Down, she said. Thank you, he said. I'll do that. It's the woman of the house that invited me in. He went in and he sat down. I guess no matter who you stay. And that's how he got in.
Well, Papalet, I should home Papalet. I was wondering what struck you about that story?
Well, it's an entertaining little story, you know, but also it highlights the importance of hospitality to Gaels. The woman, she wasn't doing anything terrible, but she wasn't following the norm of inviting people in and treating them with hospitality. And also, the man getting in the house, he resolved the issue with language, with words, and his wit, which is also a very strong theme in Gaelic culture. And those two things put together, and just the entertainment value of it, I like the story.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah.
You got that from Mickey Benilak.
Yes, I got it from Mickey Benilak. Yeah.
Yeah. So Mickey Benilak was from Iona, and that's just right in the middle of Cape Breton, around the Bredor Lakes. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the Gaels who lived in that area.
Sure.
And about their tradition.
Yeah. Well, most of the people in that area, their ancestors came from Barra. They're Barra extraction. And there's a very strong identification in the area with Barra. You ask anyone, where'd your people come from? They came from Barra. Jay Shorts of Gaelic, Cape Breton, show. What kind of Gaelic do they speak here? Oh, Barra Gaelic here, Barra Gaelic. It's a very strong identity. There are also some people of South extraction as well. But it's a very strong, rich story tradition in Barra and South and song tradition as well. And that continued on in that area as the collections will attest, you know, John Warren Campbell, Francis Campbell, their collection attests to the prominence of that area for Gaelic. And of course, the people from Barra and South brought that to Cape Breton, and it's continued and it flourished here.
Right. Yeah. And John Lorne published a book, Songs Remembered in Exile, John Lorne Campbell, and it was a lot of the songs that he got from that area. Yeah.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
So we're talking about storytelling tonight, and I wondered if you could tell us a bit about the storytelling tradition of the Gaels. You know, what they told maybe long ago, and also what kind of stories they were telling when you started to learn Gaelic.
Yeah. Well, of course, the Gaels are custodians of one of the richest storytelling traditions in Western Europe.
Mm.
And that was all brought to Cape Breton. And to go through all the, even the different types of stories, would take a lot more time than we have here.
Mhm.
But you have, the Fenian tales, are probably the most popular tales, of the large tales. As John Shaw points out in his book that he and Joe Neal did, tellers to tell Fenian tales was it was a special office. That's what you did, and that was highly respected. But there was also wonder tales, the international folk tales they call them. Wonder tales taking in superstition, taking in magic, taking in second sight, taking in so many things. And there's witches and fairy lore, as they say, and humorous stories, local history, clan history. All these are all genres of stories, and a
Mhm.
lot of the stories within them.
Mhm. Mhm. And what stories were they telling when you were learning? What kind of stories did they tend to keep on telling,
Well,
Gaels?
say if Joe Neal was there, in my experience,
Mhm.
Joe Neal was there, you would get wonder tales. You would get the magic horse. The
Yeah.
magic horse, and he flies to Greece. Um, and there were other tales, second sight tales, very popular in my memory. The trickster stories were very
Yeah.
popular. Numerous local stories, character stories.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Mm. And who were some of Echan, the storytellers that
yeah,
you knew when you were learning Gaelic
yeah.
from this area?
Sure. Well, I count Joe Neal as part of that area too. He spent
Mm-hmm.
so much time there, and he knew my people too. He knew my
Mm-hmm.
grandfather and those people. But Joe Neal, you have to say him first. I mean, there's nobody like him. He didn't have. We're just saying in the conversation here earlier in the breakout, he had contemporaries, but he didn't really have peers, and that I knew at least. There was nobody like him. His memory was just amazing, and he would tell the wonder tales. But and he was very gentle and very accommodating, even deferential to people. But he had this great mind, and then there was people like Mickey Bendelek. Mickey Bendelek, very smallish, kind of a quick man, an entertainer, charismatic.
Yes.
And he had his sayings, and he'd start in something, get your attention. I spent time with him. I really liked Mickey a lot. Man who enjoyed living and enjoyed people. And
Uh-huh.
then Bernard MacNeil in Rear Christmas Island, another storyteller, quiet, gentle delivery. Um, he'd draw you to him with his quiet way. He'd be telling the story. Well, now, Hector, I'm going to tell you a story. And as he was talking, you felt yourself physically drawing closer to him, and he had you in the story. A different kind of storyteller altogether from, say, Mickey.
Uh-huh.
So, and then there were other storytellers like Dole
Mm-hmm.
McCacker from Sydney. He's a great storyteller, lots of good local stories.
Mm-hmm.
And Angus Beaton, of course, a wonderful storyteller. I didn't know him well. I only met him a couple of times.
Then Angus Beaton, did you say? From
Yes, yeah,
Blackstone. Yeah.
from Blackstone. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And Greg Smith
Yeah.
and Angus Koo
Yeah.
from that area. Great storytellers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Neil John Gillis had some stories from that area there.
Indeed, he did. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Neil John. Yeah.
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 Were there any women that told stories?
Not that I met. Not that I met.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there were, and there probably are, women storytellers, but there was none that I met in my experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was more the domain of men, I guess. And women, did they hold more of the song tradition or
Yeah. I
men
think that
sing?
was I think that was true, although there were exceptions to that. There were women storytellers, I understand, and great ones, but not as many as men.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Hector, I was wondering if you could take us to a time when you heard a really good story.
Yeah. Okay.
Take us to that moment. Where were you, and
Yeah.
what were you doing there? And
Making trouble.
make trouble.
No, there was one night in particular. I was doing a little bit of. I never did a lot of collecting. You know, I was kind of busy teaching, and I collect stuff for use for teaching material.
Mhm.
But I went down to see Mickey Benelik in Iona. I was living in Antigonish that year. And it was in January night. We'd had a fresh snowfall. I got to Mickey's place and I walked in and the kitchen stove, the wood stove was blaring. The place was nice and warm and Mickey was there ready, you know, for company. And we were talking and got around to stories, talking about stories. And he told me the story, Donald Donald the Boundary. Bad Donald, some say evil Donald, the son of the widow. And it's a really interesting story with lots of twists and turns to it. And just a thoroughly enjoyable story. But the setting was so wonderful, sitting at his table. And you forgot there was a tape recorder there. And just listening to him tell you a story. What a luxury, you know,
Mhm.
to have someone tell you a story. I had to head back that night. And Mickey insisted that I have biscuits with butter and jam. I don't know if he baked them, but he presented them himself in a hot cup of tea. And he insisted because he said the road will be so much shorter if you start out with food in your stomach. If you're hungry starting out, you're going to be thinking to get home and when are you going to eat? And the road will be so long. And you know, he was right. It was a wonderful way to finish off a wonderful evening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Hector, you were telling me Mickey used to like to make up stories.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
He-
Yeah. He could. He had that facility.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I asked him one time how he did it, and he said, "Well, he said he worked on the ferry, the Grand Narrows ferry." He said, "Now you and I were on the ferry, standing at the rail of the ferry. I might look out the water. And I say, I remember the day that lake was on fire." And now you say, he said to me, that you say, "Yes, Mickey, you remember that terrible fire." He said, "No, there's another fellow standing beside you, but he doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know about this. So now he hears us, and we've drawn him in now to the story, to tell him the story." Yeah, so I was telling you, I went in, brought a fellow from Scotland in to visit him one time, soon after this. And we were talking, and something about Mexico came up.
Mhm.
And Mickey says, "Many a man I shot in Mexico." And he looked at me and I knew, you know, it was my part. I said, "Yes, you were in Mexico, Mickey." He said, No, I just carried on. He wasn't going to abuse the company like that. I think he just seeing if I was listening or not, you know.
Yeah. He was looking for an accomplice there.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I was waiting for the phone call, but it never came. Yeah.
I met Mickey once, and he had bought a car in Sydney, and it turned out the car was a lemon. And didn't he? You must remember this, Hector. Didn't he paint lemons all over the car?
He did indeed.
And he
Yeah.
put a sign on top of the car. This car is a lemon. And he drove all over the place with the car like that.
Yeah.
Because he didn't get any satisfaction from the dealer.
Yeah.
So that's what he did. And sure enough, he did get, when he went on, he was on the news, I think, and everything.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I got a picture of him with his lemon car. Love that.
Yeah, they begged him to let them buy that car back from
That's right.
him.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Echan. That's wonderful.
That's
I
my
wanted
pleasure.
to, I guess, tonight we're gonna go visit Mickey, but we're gonna do that virtually. We were there on Monday, and we recorded Mickey telling a story. And this is Michael MacNeil, who we know as Mickey John H. And I wondered if you could just tell us a bit about Mickey before we watch the video.
Sure. I first met Mickey when he had his store, general store in Iona, you know, and anything you wanted, Mickey had it in the store, or he could get it for you. It's the old expression, everything from needles to anchors, you know. And So that's when I met him first. And later, when I was learning Gaelic, it was a place to go in and Mickey, once he knew you were interested, he would talk to you in Gaelic, which is really quite a generous thing to do. Then later on, I got to know him as one of the members. He's the last living member, I believe, of the Iona Gaelic Singers. And a wonderful singer too, in his own right. But I've only heard him sing the whole song himself a few times, but he knows every chorus that's ever composed, I think. So he ran the store. He was a local singer, storyteller, and a wonderful guy. He has a wonderful voice, very dynamic and just natural.
Right, right. Yeah. So when we went on Monday, he told a story about Ushka na Nuyan. And were we going to talk about that now, Echen? Or
anything you like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I'm wondering if we should tell a little bit, because he mentions
Sure.
Ushka na Nuyan in the story. But what was the story behind Ushka na Nuyan, the egg water?
Yeah, the water that you boil an egg in.
Yes.
It was and is among some people that you don't drink that water. You don't use it in cooking, and some people say you don't even put it on plants to water plants. And I don't know why. I've looked, since we were talking about this, I've looked for that online and spent a few hours online. I couldn't find any reference to it, but it was strong. I remember it growing up. It was out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, the gist of the story is that the fellow, he's out fishing and he befriends a mermaid. But the fairies are stealing his cattle, and he tells this to the mermaid, and she tells him to boil up a great big pot of leecha, porridge, oatmeal porridge, every day. Eat that, and then he'll be fast enough to catch the fairies and stop them from stealing his cattle.
Mm-hmm.
Does that, but then at one point he makes up a big pot of porridge. He brings it out and he gives her a spoonful of the porridge, and because it's Ushka na Nuyan, it burns her, and it ruins a good friendship. And that's the gist of it.
Gleva. Okay, so we'll share the video now.
Maar verder wel reis, bij jaartje, is wel, hoe aan nog gewoon, bij we geen ekjes krijgen, nog, we gaan kiesko goedje, maar kiesko, dus, geen beetje nog wel van je zijn, maar veel meer bewonen toch, maar je ne zie en, dat de coach ne beetje doe je. But homak rui, the she and va rui as a jos, haroa homak is she and corui. Agus fat a coach the Belgian. Agus a hawa ba show, ba Mhigi asco. Had ik je bootje nog brie ba show, had ik je kon water. Agus hoe je fel, charles hoe she is, mis je voice vara. Wel zag jij mag gewoon brûler. Agus is gaspe how sanena mag. Ha misje koma feestdag. Is a kami poile morgen nach Lisakets. Wel hoe should en doe nog eens liedje. Kare na schie ik wel gavatrekje. We got a coach na Belgian, hoor. Well, hoe she is? Well, ik use a career te liefje hosje ze wetten. Ik use a pouch voor te liefje hosje. Piuches gemak roes, dat is de zee en niet. Agus, over shit ba. Go op is. Agus, had ik is a one ba, ja. Rydw pouch voor te liefje hosjes, waar kan je zien, agus a nwy eich efo sy'n I ohoed a mach I nwy ac fa si yn y mwys greu mech I tegen y mosh. Yw che y ber o fech o cwtioch. agus bheit do a coach a chumach a thupa as a déhaid agus habal a bó a chumach go rúi. I dí se choisce a neagar ó agus a bhána bheit a chaia díascoch sa hánig a bhóitim bhar chun bheit agus Lynach i gael mar y hwyl yw'n newid, o, a mi ffenig newid e dachgal yn ish. Ha, mae'n i fast y roed. Di o'i da ha, ysyn. Agus, bat yw san achos, agus, hwsiar eisiau foes yw faro. E ti tiw gan fad, o. Biw ti gan fad, ys wych yn y brwyn o'n da siair. O, harach i gan fad i ti, harach. Agus, a chenta kana gafat tuf nach ta di gofat a hawana bad yo roia posh for the lisha hoisha suka lisha kun vat da hoiasko de hanike voisho vara kun vat se vat de bruin agus hoka span bord de and lisha agus hoka gan voisho vara Leisha hoisha, agus hwysha bia hoisha, I se bal choche, roedd a hyn sy'n hwma choche. Agus, o, gafi nyarach, so sy'n eich, o, fawr sfwyl ag ydw yw mach o hol o rod, a chadw yw mach sef a mini chi gyfeg wysyn y lwyn. Sy'n awafi. O, gwyesio. Wysyn y lwyn. A dwi yw mach ni am tiw hwma sa wysyn y lwyn. Roedd man am darna. Well, sy'n not going to go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll try to put a little translation on that. I hope I can remember it all. There was a fella from this area. His name was Woden, and he was a very good farmer, but he was also a fisherman. And on this particular day, Woden was out fishing in his boat, and up to the boat came a mermaid. And the mermaid and Woden got along pretty good, and they were chatting away, and she said to him, you know, she said, I know a whole lot of things in this world. She said, I have vast knowledge, and I know a lot of things that you probably don't know. And, well, Woden was having a problem, I think I might have left this out, was having a problem with the fairies, and the fairies were stealing his cattle. So he asked her what might be the remedy for the fairies stealing my cattle. And she said, well, that's easy enough. Just make a nice big pot of oatmeal in the morning and eat your oatmeal in the morning, and you'll grow just as fast and as strong as the fairies. So sure enough, that's what he did. And the night came where the fairy came, and he had taken a hold of one of his cattle, one of the best cattle that he had, and he was taken off with the cattle, and oh, what an out he went, and he got a hold of the cow, and he saved the cow. Well, he was pretty proud of himself, and he was very delighted from the good advice that the mermaid had told him. So he went out in the boat, and he was chatting to her about this, and he decided to ask her to come into the boat. He liked her so much. Why don't you just come into the boat with me? But no, she wouldn't come into the boat. So he was a little disappointed, and he went home that night, and he got an idea. He thought to himself, I know what I'll do. I'll make a nice big pot of oatmeal, and I'll take that out with me. And maybe she'll like that, and maybe she'll get in the boat, maybe. And so that was okay, and he took the pot of oatmeal out, and she came up to the boat, and he gave her a big spoonful of the oatmeal, and she burnt her mouth. He burnt her mouth with the hot oatmeal, and she got mad, and she turned away, and as she was swimming away, she said, well, I guess you thought you knew everything, but I never told you about the meaning of the egg water, whether it's good or bad. A bit of a cliffhanger. go, maar Jim Francis Gagal. Fiach sing it, you.
Is it maar?
Hey, you're going no go, there is narrow. Hey, you're going no go. Hey, you're going to hold on, hammy ching at the hole. Hey, you're going no go, there is narrow. Hey, you're going no go. Hey, you're going to hold right at the way, hold me all. Hey, you're going no go. You're going no go. Hey, you're going to hold and shit the grey green malone. Hey, you're going no go. It is narrow. Hey, you're going no go. Strong na throw me still hang and there's Spain a hill. Hey, you're going no go. It is narrow. Hey, you're going no go. Sin jarú the chagan now chur habil we are going no go it is narrow we are going no go how na khaya wulangek for a nave and na crois we are going no go it is narrow we are going no go okay three fishes store Pavik viagan kauri you're no go is arrow you're going no go being seen jaru the chagan now chur habil we you're going no go is narrow you're going no go with my wife at the hounds with my el at the fall we you're going no go that is narrow we you're going no go with my wife a hound van got the year yam and dorny you're going no go that is narrow we you're going no go no yes misharoon yo croon at the gorny you're going no go it is narrow you're going no go yo shinas root na shed marisha ma watch it all you're going no go it is narrow you're going no go it is narrow you're going no go
Ginger pain. Vegetable. Finished. And this session, we're gonna speak to Colin for a bit. There he is. Hello. Hi, Colin. You're muted, Colin.
There we go.
There we go. Hello.
You know no Colin.
Good man. Tap please.
Okay. Run job ma an orange. Go to room the
Yeah, Hanukkah, all right.
I see, obvious you and Mickey are good friends. I just wondered how did you become friends?
Yeah, well, I knew Mickey when I was a kid, and my father used to take me into his store, and Mickey would say, "Bring Gaelic room, I guess yo bad chocolate." He would say, "Come into the store," he'd say, and yeah, and speak a little Gaelic, and I'll give you a chocolate bar. So I always remembered that about Mickey, and like you say, he was great on the choruses, and he was a good member of the Iona Gaelic Singers. So yeah, we did a lot of singing together off and on, I guess, at Phage events and Milling Frolics over the years, and then after I was away across Canada for a little while, and when I got back, I had the opportunity to go into the bonus bar program with Mickey, and we became good friends. And there was lots of Caeling going on then, and still is now. And yeah, so it wasn't long after that I started building a house here in Mickey's hayfield, just on the other side of the road. And it's kind of an ancestral plot for him. It was the same spot where he was actually living when he grew up, and he'd actually been born in the house in the same plot where I built. So he had a lot of familiarity with the lay of the land, and it helped well up a lot of great stories for him. And still does when he comes over for a visit. So yeah, I live in the community here now, and yeah, we see one another quite frequently, and I take him to get his groceries once in a while and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Colin.
Yeah.
Yeah, good on you. Good on you. So how do you think your friendship with Mickey will influence you going forward from here now? What have you learned from
He's a big influence on my life, honestly. He's had a big impact on my life as far as Gaelic goes. And I still speak relatively an Inverness dialect of Gaelic, and Mickey is very bare Gaelic. But so we do have that difference. And there is that little difference there. But he's definitely influenced my singing style a little bit. And I notice I sing kind of differently now, maybe just because of his influence and the other influence of other singers in the area here too. Yeah, he's quite a traditionalist. So I mean, he lays down a pretty good program of hospitality, like you say. When you go to his house, he has a good rhythm to the Cayley that he follows, and those are all kind of things that I incorporate into my own life here. Yeah, so Mickey's also good on jokes. You know, he's good on little community lores and anecdotes, and he's a good time tracker as well. And it's kind of impressive how he keeps track of events that's happened in the community since the 30s onward, really. And he also has a great way of keeping time on it from the generation before he was even alive. Yeah. And so I'd like to pick that up off him. He talks about the old people quite a bit, and you know, these are the people that were maybe his age when he was young. So he has a great way of keeping track of history that way. And you know, and he'll say, oh, just the way he puts things, you know, he'll say, oh, well, I remember the old people, they'd be saying that the tractor was going to ruin the farming or something like that. And you know, he remembers the first tractor that came into the area, and he said, oh, Queenacham Sanach, I guess worst canal of show Haya nursed, Haya Nash, Kersa Mass, Haya Sarahaga it nursed, he said. So, and they thought that was awful. The tractor that came into the community, it would go backwards just as easily as it would go forwards. And, yeah, so, yeah,
well,
it's kind of a fun way to keep history too.
Wonderful, wonderful friendship there, and
yeah,
and you're taking advantage of that to the fullest, and it's wonderful that you two found each other and became such good friends. Good on both of you. Yeah, it was a great match for Bonus Bar, and yeah, Mickey, he's happy to share whatever he has with everybody. So yes. Well, thank you very much, Colin, for talking to us tonight. That was wonderful. Really nice. Yeah, no problem.
Tapalit and Jeez Jacob, thank you so much, the two of you, for taking us to Central Cape Breton, to Iona, Jamesville, Ballahamish, Bayachastel, where Echan is is living now. So it was really delightful to come and visit you, and thanks for taking me to visit Mickey. Colin, you might come back at the end of the session to sing a song, maybe sing another
Yes.
song for
Yeah,
us.
sure.
That'd be great. Okay, super. So I think that what we're going to do now is go back in our breakout rooms and groups of 3 again. And the questions that we're going to ask you, which will be in the chat, is we want to know what moved you about the Gaelic stories and the Gaelic storytelling, the storytellers that Echan and Colin talked about. What are you curious about? And who in your ancestors would you like to hear a story from? And who would you like to hear these stories in the future? And what is emerging for you, and what connections are you making? So there's quite a few questions there. I think we're going to have about 15 minutes to do this. So Natasha will put us in our breakout rooms, and then we'll see you back on the other side in our little Gaelic group. Very nice. So we're going to take the last bit of time to share in the chat some of the things, our observations from the evening. And we have some questions for you to think about and to write in the chat. So we'll take about maybe 3 to 5 minutes to do that. So just take a moment to think about the questions, and then if you shared with us, it would be really, would love to see what you're thinking. So the questions we have is, what is gained? What do we gain in our lives when we keep storytelling and the stories alive? Share one insight that you have as a result of tonight's session. And what themes did you hear? And what actions are you inspired to take? If you're inspired to do anything from this session, we would like to hear about it. And what we'll do is we take the chat and we archive it on the How We Thrive website, and the other chats and the harvests from the other sessions are on there as well. Let's take a few minutes to do that. And maybe we'll read out a couple. Peter says, I think we maintain a unique cultural view of the world. Humor is mentioned of the old stories. Susan. A greater connection to each other, to our ancestors. Some regret we didn't record the stories. That's a common feeling. Intergenerational connections. Okay. I was struck by the enthusiasm I heard from the storytellers. It was lovely to hear and see. You can be 90 and still talking about the older people. A sense of connection to one another and our ancestors. What we gain is the ability to travel back in time and get to know people who died long ago. There are many I feel I know now. These stories are so full of wit and actions. So nice to see them. Oops, they're going fast. Almost 3 generations at ease with each other. I was inspired to record all of my father's wonderful stories that he picked up in Glace Bay. I'm inspired to slow down and take the time to connect with people in my life, to share openly. It's lovely. Master storytellers, all deep friendship with older Gaels. Lovely. Ingle Risu Lahat Fawov. Oh, so please keep writing in the chat what comes to you. Would love to hear more. And I think now we are almost ready to say goodnight. Hector, did you want to take a few minutes to, yeah.
Sure. Well, we'd like to thank our guests, Mhigi John H. MacNeil and Colin Watson. And we'd like to thank Natasha on tech, Francis McCacken, who put so much work into this. Thank you, Francis. And we'd like to thank the folks at How We Thrive, the Office of Gaelic Affairs, and we'd like to thank you for joining in this evening. You make it. Thank you very much. The next session will be hosted by Mike Kennedy. And Mike, would you like to tell folks a little bit about that session coming up?
Geez, I was so swept away with the stories, I forgot I had a speaking part here tonight. Next Friday is the last of our 6 sessions. It's entitled Bún Iskiaun, Upside Down. Ask not what you can do for Gaelic, ask what Gaelic can do for you. And we're going to consider whether we carry stories with us that maybe weigh us down, deplete us about Gaelic, maybe even leave us feeling a little bit hopeless about what we could do to rejuvenate the culture. And we're going to swap that narrative upside down and ask instead, what can Gaelic do for us? What is it that we love about this culture? How does it fill our lives with meaning and richness? And joining me on the call to discuss that, to share their stories, will be Kenneth McKenzie and Maddie Britton. Maddie is a Gaelic singer, a classic player, a step dancer, and she loves Gaelic so much that she left her home in beautiful Edinburgh, Scotland, to come make a life here in Nova Scotia. She's been heavily involved in the Language and Lyrics Project, transcribing and cataloging the large repertoire of Gaelic songs that have been recorded here in Nova Scotia to make them more available to all of us, which is a wonderful resource. And Kenneth McKenzie is a native Gaelic speaker from Mabu, Cape Breton, who is raising his family in Gaelic. He is a piper, a fiddler, director of education at the Gaelic College, and he's been very active in a very exciting project to bring the first ever Gaelic immersion school in North America here to Nova Scotia. So it promises to be a very exciting evening. So I hope you'll all join us and share stories about what you love about Gaelic culture and how it enriches your life. And I think we've got a bit of a surprise too that we'll announce on that night. So please do join us.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike. That'll be great. Colin Watson, Aveluaun, Shinohe. Okay, you'll take us out with a song, Colin.
Sure. Stalum Krynyak Eunambo, Hewling le Trochoin and Crow, Stalum Krynyak Eunambo, Stalum Krynyak, Stalum Quahachi and Cherwagarain Maleum, Stalum Krynyak Eunambo, Hewling le Trochoin and Crow, Stalum Krynyak Eunambo. Stalum Krynyak down a Harry Ganduk me Magrags me oak, Stalum Krynyak down and bow, Hewling let Trochoin and Crow. Krynyak down and bow, Stalum Banarocha Buala Buana Roshka da Point, Stalum Krynyak down and bow, Hewling let Trochoin and Crow, Stalum Krynyak and bow. Stalum nian down and okri down so go at ochet bar, Stalum Krynyak down and bow, Hewling let Trochoin and Crow, Stalum Gawn yn bo, hewling let trochia giw, sgifia cach a phaned jorn, stolum, crynia gawn yn bo, hewling let trochoin yn craw. Crynia gawn yn bo, fydd di a chin a fi brain, commising a cria bel, stolum, crynia gawn yn bo. Let trochoin yn craw, stolum, crynia gawn yn bo, stolum, ben yr och y grinia, chwre fyd yn a wyog, stolum, crynia gawn yn bo, hewling let trochoin yn craw. Crynia gawn yn bo, stolum, ben yr och y bwla, ec y fel da groi maraw, stolum, crynia gawn yn bo, hewling let trochoin yn craw. Crynia gawn yn bo, hewling let trochoin ar y moch gyffio cach y bryn norn, stolum, crynia gawn yn bo, hewling let trochoin yn craw. Crynia gawn yn bo, hewling let trochoia farich gyffio cach y sienach y thorn, stolum, crynia gawn yn bo, hewling let trochoin yn craw. Crynia gawn yn bo, hewling let trochoin yn craw, stolum, crynia gawn yn bo.
Woo! Yoo-hoo!
Shino hena Helen. Chanel sin fforesta, Egypt.
That's your Toma.
All right, well, Tadhail, come on. Thank you,
You
Valley.
know, that's your Toma. Happily will listen to you. Thanks, everyone.
Tadhail.
Thank you, Valif.
Thank you,
Thank you, Valif.
Apple at that.
Ai, gyfelaf.